Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the Benchwarmer Sports Podcast. I'm Raffi, joined by Davian. Davian, it has been a wild week. We finally got the big game that we've been waiting on for so long, Georgia, Texas. So we'll be for sure talking about that later on in the show. But Davian, I know you're probably doing great. I'm doing less ideal because, and I think these are kind of related to the two. Davian, how are you doing?
Well, let me just say this. The Rangers are doing great. The Patriots are rebuilding, which is okay. It's okay. Um, but the Yankees, man, the Yankees. Rafi, what did I say? What did I say? No, oh no, the Yankees aren't making a World Series, huh? What do you guys say now? What do you guys say now? Yeah, you got nothing to say. That's what I thought. Juan Soto, Judge, this team is bringing home the pennant. Gonna get a championship back in New York, and I'm so hype about that. Don't get me wrong, this could be a great World Series. I mean, the Dodgers are an amazing team as well, but it's the Yankees, man.
You want
Beyond
to know the
that,
best
I
part about
mean,
that? You cut out for the first part. So whatever you said, I had no idea what you said. I
oh,
just heard the last part, and I'm like,
darn it.
so I got spared. I guess we'll see what happens in post and see what you had to say.
Yeah,
But
okay.
anyways, what were you saying?
Yeah, but I mean, Rafi, the Blackhawks are in 2-4. You have anything to say about that?
Not really. Unlike your wild takes on the Patriots, I had realistic expectations for my favorite team, the Chicago Blackhawks. I knew that
Right, right,
it
right,
was
right.
going to be another year of likely picking in the top five. Offense needs to get clicking a little bit more, but you know what? The talent we're slowly building up. I really like where we're at offensively, defensively. We look like a hockey team. The last 2 years, I couldn't say that about the Blackhawks, which was really sad
Yeah,
and upsetting to watch. Now, literally, I cannot watch them because the new Chicago Sports Network featuring the Bulls, White Sox, and Blackhawks is not on YouTube TV, which is ridiculous. But
yeah,
Reinsdorf is going to Reinsdorf. I don't know why the Blackhawks decided to partner with him in this stupid thing, but it is what it
yeah,
is. Most people can't even watch the Blackhawks, and honestly, at this point, I don't think most people want to watch the Blackhawks still, because unless you're a diehard like me, who is now sailing the seas per se, potentially can't confirm nor deny. Most people, I think, are just tuned out right now because the Blackhawks aren't very good, and overall, too, like, why are you gonna go out of your way to buy an antenna, etc., to watch the Bulls, Blackhawks, or White Sox right now? None of those three teams are particularly good if you're a casual Chicago sports fan. So Blackhawks are
yeah,
fine.
yeah,
They're on the right track, but yeah, they're definitely bound
yeah.
for another top five pick this year. Let's get into the big thing, which is starting in 20 minutes as we're recording this podcast at around 6:30, 6:45 p.m. Central Time on Friday. And that's the World Series. David, you indicated it. The Yankees made it to the World Series. They're playing the Dodgers. Now, this was very predictable. I wanted to change things up, and I also this was like a dread from it, run from it. You're getting a Yankees Dodgers World Series, especially after last year too, where
And you always
the viewership
rise.
was terrible, and I'm sure the MLB, the higher up people in MLB were not happy at all with the fact that we had Diamondbacks versus the Rangers. Again, very low viewed. Not too many people cared. I watched most of those games. I think I watched all of them, but for like a casual sports fan, no one wanted to watch that World Series, and
Yeah,
I don't blame
no,
them because it was two smaller market
yeah,
teams. And although there were great stories, both teams were great, and it went 6 games. No one really cared too much to watch it. If you're just like, oh, like let me see what's on. This year, however, man, the Cowboys and Lakers fans must be so like, who do I pick? Do I pick my favorite team, my 1A in the Dodgers, or do I pick my 1B in the Yankees? Who do I choose? They're going to be happy regardless. But you went from two small market teams to, I'll call it what it is, the two biggest markets, the two biggest teams, arguably, not even arguably, in the entire MLB playing against each other and clashing it out. The Yankees haven't made a World Series since 2009. I've greatly enjoyed that time. I hope that they lose this World Series. And then you have the Dodgers, who last won the World Series in 2020, but that was in a 60 game shortened season. A lot of people call that, well, it's a Mickey Mouse title. I use the same logic with the Lakers, so I just apply to the Dodgers too. So this will be interesting. And yeah, again, if you're the MLB, this is two massive markets. People are going to tune in general because it's the Dodgers versus the Yankees. You have all stars on both sides, and this is going to be a great series. I once again hope the Yankees lose, but I also hope that it goes at least 7 games for sure because I want to see the best players, and these two teams do have the best players. As much as I'd like seeing them fall on their face over the past decade.
Yeah. I kind of agree with that. I mean, I think, you know, in terms of who has it better set off to be a dynasty, I think in some ways, I mean, you just kind of mentioned, started like alluding to that. As much as I'm a Yankees fan, the Dodgers have it more figured out because they have these guys right under long term contracts. And for the Yankees, we don't know if Glaber's going to go anywhere. We don't know where if Juan Soto stays.
Right.
And you know what? Money talks, and I don't know if they'll be able to provide money for all of those guys. And it will definitely be like a concern. But that also motivates the Yankees more to win now because of that situation that they're in. Because Juan Soto is a free agent after this year. Because Gleyber Torres might be leaving. And I think that's what makes it such an exciting like it's such an exciting World Series because both teams have been always predicted to go all the way, but they never have. And for years and years and years, they keep falling short. And now both teams have a chance to really, you know, show that they're the kings of baseball and with, the young talent, and they're exciting to watch. I mean, Yankees baseball is always, the bomb, like the Yankee Bombers, it's like I feel like it speaks for itself in some ways, but yeah, I'm really excited for Yankees, the Yankees Dodgers World Series. All right, I mean, let's talk about Georgia Texas. I mean, like, what a game! First off, also, since when can fans all of a sudden change the call middle of a game? I mean, like, look, I'm a passionate fan, right? I mean, here at Cornell Hockey, we love to rile up the refs, but to throw bottles on the field and then somehow get the call reversed, I mean, some shady stuff happened there. But hey, I mean, Georgia is the team to beat. I mean, this team, like, look, I'm not the biggest fan of Carson Beck, but they showed off. They showed up, and they're unless Vandy does something and pulls some crazy things off. Georgia's really, really good. I have no other way of putting it, Rafi. What are your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, obviously that was a big swing where we thought we had it one way, and then obviously the refs protested, and then we wound up getting that pick. Now Texas wasn't able to really do much with that momentum.
Yeah.
I think that was a drive that they killed off that Georgia's defense was able to defend. And I didn't watch the first half, but 23-0 Georgia. I did see that Arch Manning did come in for a little bit because Quinn Ewers was certainly struggling a lot, and this was one of those games too that was concerning if I was evaluating Quinn Ewers' draft stock because I don't know, like he was acting very rattled. He was very paranoid from the highlights that I was watching before he got subbed out for Arch Manning, and it's like you're playing at home. This isn't an away game for Georgia. If it was an away game for Georgia, like I'd be like, okay, like Carson Beck versus Alabama a couple of weeks ago was completely just like out of it for the first half, and then he came back, etc. Quinn Ewers, you're playing in Texas. I don't know why he just did not seem ready to go from the get go. He did come back in later on, but 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. He was solid in the second half. They just weren't able to dig themselves out of a hole. It was a pretty kind of a similar script to Georgia Alabama a couple of weeks ago, where one team gets out to a big lead in the first half, and then the other team kind of tries to come back a little bit, but comes up too short. Texas, I think they could have done more with that momentum. Obviously, the refs overturned that call after. I don't think necessarily the fans were like, we're gonna like hurt or like affect the refs, and the refs were like, oh, we gotta change this call. I think it was more of they just allowed more time because of the delay, and then the call got reversed. And it was the right. They wound up making the right call. It was definitely an interception for Texas,
Yep, they did.
but it was disappointing to see how Texas really they got it to a 1-score game, but Georgia then was like, okay, we're closing this out. We're not letting Texas take this game over. We're not letting them get the momentum. And their defense did a great job of suppressing Texas and ensuring that Texas wasn't able to complete a drive because they had a couple drives that they made good progress on, but Georgia would just close the door on 4th down and just say, no, you're not getting any points here. And that wound up being the big difference in this game. Georgia now jumps up to the number 2 team in the country, where they're now right behind Oregon, beat Ohio State also very recently too. So now Oregon's number one team undefeated. Penn State is playing Ohio State next week, not this upcoming weekend. So that's going to be a big game as well. But I think we have, in my mind right now, and then we'll get into another team as well too. This year with the 12-team playoff, I think is if there's any year to do a 12-team playoff, I really think it's this year because I
Yeah.
honestly don't really know who is the best team in college football. I think there's a couple teams that I kind of have at the top where I'm like, okay, Georgia, Texas, Oregon, still Ohio State. Those are like my big four. But you also have like the Penn States. You have the Miami. Miami's struggled a little bit, and they've had some tough games too. They almost lost to Virginia Tech a couple weeks ago. They've had a rough go of it starting games. Louisville came back last weekend as well, made it a really close game, much closer than it should have been, with Miami getting out to a big lead.
Yeah.
Tennessee, obviously being Alabama recently, they've been really good. So I think this year we might see some more upsets, and we might see some more interesting matchups in this college football playoff. And again, like shout out to teams. We might see some fun teams too. Like Iowa State might get in from out of the Big 12. We might see Indiana get in potentially as a like they're not going to win the Big 10, but they could still jump in.
Yeah.
And to fully summarize and conclude this argument that I've been not really argument, but point out I'm making. Thank goodness that we ditched the stupid East West North South, all that dumb like divisions, because
Yeah.
now it's just like the two best teams. Whoever the two top teams in the conference play each other in the conference championship makes things much nicer. Trust me,
Yeah.
like as a Big Ten, like as someone who's from the Big Ten like region, it was so frustrating to be like, okay, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, one of those teams. Okay, who are you guys playing? Oh, it's Northwestern for the 1 year they're good. Oh, it's Iowa, and then Iowa gets blown out because they can't keep up
Yeah.
offensively. So finally, we're doing top two teams in the conference play each other in the conference championship game, which I'm a massive fan of. I'm very glad that I haven't been too happy with how regions have shifted, and we're not region based with conferences, but I'm at least happy that the two top teams in the conference will be playing each other in the conference championship game. I think that makes sense to me, and it's then you could potentially get like Michigan, Ohio State again, which would be insane, for example.
Yeah. I 100% agree with that. And I want to talk about some other teams that, aren't in the top 12 and probably won't really end up there. BYU, I mean, that team is it's such an interesting team. Such an interesting story. I mean, having your quarterback be not only not Mormon, but being Jewish. And then, this entire trend starting with a BY Jew. It's quite funny to watch. Indiana is one hell of a story. Pardon my
Right.
French, but wow, that's a fun. It's just a fun team to watch. They're just a scoring juggernaut. Speaking of scoring juggernauts, Boise State. Look, Boise State may have not had the hardest schedule out here, but Ashton Jetty is I don't even know how to explain it. Like, he is so freaking good. I mean,
David, is he your Heisman
in another
pick?
world,
David, do you think is he your Heisman pick right now?
yeah,
'Cause
yeah,
I think
he
like
is. I mean,
I think
honestly,
well
he really
he's
is. He's carrying this team.
yeah, I think he's well above everyone.
Right?
Like I've seen the ESPN poll they put out like once a week where it's like, oh, who's your Heisman winner? And it's him, and then you have like Carson Beck, then you have Miami's quarterback who I'm blanking on right now what his name is. But anyways, like you have a couple
Right.
players,
Yeah.
and it's like always like 60-70% of the fans are just saying like, give JT the Heisman because he, like you might be like, oh, like
Exactly. I mean, it should
1,100 yards, okay, that's solid. But then you realize, like, he hasn't played, like, a full game of football. Like, he's doing -1 games because they've been taking him out because he's blowing out teams. Boise State blows out teams in the first half, and then they pull him.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
If he was playing these games full 60 minutes, his numbers would look even more ridiculous. He'd be well over 1,500 yards in all likelihood, which is just, yes, you can make the argument that he's playing inferior competition, but you gotta give props for it. He's putting up video game numbers against these teams, and you can make the argument there's less competition. But I don't see any other running back in the Big West doing anything close to what JT is doing this year. It's crazy, and
Like, can we just mention he put 192 yards? He rushed 192 yards on Oregon, which is considered, I guess, the best team right now in college football, I guess, according to rankings. I mean, this guy is having a Reggie Bush-like campaign, and the fact is, and the sad fact is, Rafi, we both know he's not going to win the Heisman. right? I mean, it's gonna go to some QB, and I don't know like who it's gonna be, whether it's Carson Beck or Quinn Ewers or whatnot. But it just sucks. It's really sad to
You know
see,
what,
but
Davian? I'm gonna
you
go
know what?
crazy.
Look,
I'll
it's
first
great
correct
football
myself.
that we're
It's the
seeing right
Mountain
now,
West, not the
and
Big West.
like
I'll first correct myself. It was the not the Big West. It was the Mountain West. But yeah, I completely agree because. But I'll
yeah,
also say too, like these quarterbacks haven't been too impressive this year. I haven't been blown away by any of these quarterbacks, and there's no wide receiver putting up the numbers we saw from Devonta Smith when he won the Heisman, Marvin Harrison Jr. when he's been in
yep,
consideration.
exactly, yeah,
So if there's any year to give it to a non-Power Five player, like I think this might be the year for Dainty just entirely. And I really hope that we get Boise State as the non-power five, non-power four team in the college football playoff this year. I really hope that they put Boise State in because then we'll really get an idea of like, okay, JT, you're already gone against Oregon, but like face another top 10 school in the country, another solid defense and all that good, and let's see how he does because it's crazy to say. Like, I genuinely think that he's having like a Saquon Barkley type of year. I don't think he's gonna go as high as Saquon Barkley did. Obviously, Saquon Barkley went, I think, what, second overall in 2017, 2018, whatever year it was. But you have to imagine at this point, unless barring like an injury, which knock on wood, hopefully never happens this year or in general, you'd have to imagine he's a lock to be like a top 15 pick potentially. Like again, this is like Bijan Robin. Like,
yeah. I mean, it would have to be. It would have to be, right? I mean, I feel like there's no other way of going around it. But yeah, I mean, Rafi, this has been some exciting football. I know I've said it before, but to say it again, college football, it's nothing else really like it. Nothing else really like it.
yeah,
We do need to talk about NFL, Rafi, and Tua's coming back this week, so Dolphins should be at least somewhat back. Um, Devontae is on the Jets, and they still stink. And yeah, I mean, Rafi, how you feeling? I mean, oh, also, what a robbery from the from by the refs of the Vikings the other day. I'm sorry, I'm
yeah.
tripping over my words. It's just like so bizarre what happened. Like that was a clear face mask call. I don't know how you can't see that. Either way, I think the Vikings coach really handled it well. When he mentioned that it was clear face mask, but we shouldn't have been in that position to lose the game. And the Vikings are a very good team. The Rams are a good team, and I hope Sam Darnold gets paid very soon, or gets paid over this offseason because he's been balling. Also, so is Justin Jefferson. That's kind of my review on this at least past Thursday night game, and a few other things to mention. But Rafi, you got anything else you want to talk about NFL or anything that you? What's like the biggest? What team like worries you? I know we talked about this last week, like some teams that really worry you whether they're going to be able to make it in the playoffs. A week later, are there any teams you're excited about after what you saw this past week?
Yeah, honestly, I'm pretty concerned about the Saints at this point, and I think most people are with the Saints. And I think
Yeah,
right now, in my mind, I think the Saints 2-0 start said more about the Panthers and Cowboys being really disappointing this year and being quite bad, more than it was like the Saints offense is this amazing thing. Oh, the Saints are like amazing. They're such a great team, etc. They're leading everything in offense. I think that two things can be true. The Saints are not the team that won those first two games. They're not as good as that team was.
yeah,
But they're also not as bad as the Buccaneers putting up 51 points on them. And then Javonte Williams running for what felt like at least 200 yards on the Saints for not this past Thursday, but the Thursday before in Sean Payton's revenge game on the Saints. I think that there's a variety of factors. Obviously, Derek Carr's been out the past 2 weeks, and Spencer Rattler
that's
didn't
true.
do a terrible job versus Tampa, but obviously you still lost by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah,
And then this past game versus the Broncos, he was like there was nothing. And you also have Rahid Shaheed, who's now out for the year, who got injured in that Tampa game. And then Chris Olave got concussed as well in the game versus Tampa very early in that game and missed the Broncos game due to a short week. And then he didn't clear concussion protocol. And Kamara, every week, it's something new with him. He has a rib injury, he has a hand injury. So he's been also like, he hasn't been fully 100%. So I think the injuries have completely derailed him offensively. And Chris Olave is coming back this week. Derek Carr should be back the next week. So they're slowly starting to get more and more healthy. Obviously, you're not going to get Shaheed back, unfortunately, this year. So I think the Saints, again, they're not as good as they were when they won those two games. They're not as good as we think they thought they were, but they're also, I don't think they're as bad as they've been for the past
No.
5 games. I think they're somewhere in between, but regardless, I think the team's just not a playoff team.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna agree with you on there. I think that the Jaguars. I think Doug Marrone just pushed off another week that he doesn't get fired. This Patriots team, I am gonna say I am worried about the Patriots. And the reason why I'm going to say this is what every other sports pundit has been saying this past week. You don't call your team soft on national television. I'm sorry. Yes, the team hasn't been playing well. Maybe they haven't been putting enough effort. But you call the team soft in the locker room, not out in the media. And that's why Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, Julian Edelman have all spoken out against not Julian Edelman, but Devin McCourty have all spoken out against Jared Mayo because that's not the Patriot way, and that's just not not even just not the Patriot way. That's just not what a coach does. You take accountability, and that's not what he did. He blamed it all on the players, and I just want to say Drake May has been doing amazing, and he is a clearly was a top 3 pick, and it makes sense. I'm gonna run through his stats with you real quick, Roth, because look, against the Texans, 243 yards, 3 touchdowns. Against the Jaguars, 276 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's thrown for over 500 yards and 5 touchdowns in all the games that he's been starting. This guy is playing great for a rookie, and it's just sad that the media can't even pay attention to that because we have a stupid head coach who's calling the team soft instead of really addressing it within the locker room. Clearly I'm passionate about this, and the reason why I'm so passionate about it is because as a Patriots fan, I understood that this wasn't going to be the year we go to the Super Bowl. I understood to an extent that we won't be as good as, we won't be very good, that we might finish under 500. But what I've been seeing from this Patriots team is just not it. The defense was amazing last year. We have a defensive-minded coach. It's still the same defensive game plan, you'd think, but it's just clearly not showing up. The Patriots have operate a very simple defense. They have done that for years, and it seems like they can't even execute the simple things right. And I blame that on the coaching, not the players.
A very, very passionate rant. And I do think that there's some reasoning to question the coaching, especially as you said, they returned essentially the same players on defense, and there's no difference in system. Gerard Mayo has been in the Patriots. He's essentially been incubated for this season to where Bill Belichick is relieved of his duties. Gerard Mayo, okay, you already know everything. You already have everything settled. The only player that they really lost was Matthew Judon, and he hasn't really done too much with the Falcons this year from a pass rush perspective. So you can make the argument that with his injury history, etc., they didn't really lose too much. And yeah, I think the biggest shock to me is just the defense. I agree with you. It's been really bad. I think we all expected the Patriots offense to not be good this year. Drake May has stepped in and played really well these past 2 weeks in his first 2 games. I don't think he's been insane by all means, but he's been a rookie quarterback. He's made his mistakes, but you know what? He's been pretty solid. I'd say he's played better in his first 2 games than Caleb Williams did in his first 2 games. So I think he's off to a good start. And you have some pieces. You have DeMario Douglas. You have also tight end Hunter Henry. Rodney Stevenson is a guy who shows up some weeks, doesn't really show up other weeks. That's a whole other thing that we get into. But
yeah, that's a whole other can of worms. Yeah.
I definitely question the coaching. I personally think that it's best just to see it out for the year, see what happens. I personally, and this is not coming from a hater perspective, this is a no bias perspective. I think I'd like to at least see 2 years before I really because I think people in the NFL, it's such a demanding results business where it's we need to see results right away. I think if you give them next year as well, give them in our off season, if things are still off the rails for the Patriots, then it's a bit of a concern. If you get an offensive weapon or 2 for Drake May and this is the same result, then I'd start to question his coaching as a whole. And yeah, the defense that's been the backbone of the Patriots over the past couple years. Even in the twilight years of Tom Brady's time there, Tom Brady wasn't
Yeah,
at the
of
top of
course.
his game, but you knew that the Patriots were going to be a top 5, 10 defense in the NFL, and we're going to keep
Yeah,
similar to what the Steelers are right now. But the Patriots offense was still a little better than what the Steelers offense is.
yeah,
It's definitely some red alarms overall for the New England Patriots. And
yeah,
another team too. Speaking of teams like the Patriots in Tom Brady's final years, the Pittsburgh Steelers, let's weld, last week versus the Jets, they put on a pretty good performance overall, beating the Jets
yeah.
by what is it, 22 points, three scores, and the
22
Jets
points.
are
Yep.
coming. We're coming off a really bad loss to the Bills, and it wasn't bad in the sense that they got blown out. It was a close loss, but the kicking
Yeah,
situation just completely derailed them. They left 9 points on the table. The offense wasn't able to really still do much, which set up Greg Zerline to keep missing field goals in the first place. And it felt like they kind of let that game get away from them at the end of the day, where they had their chances but just couldn't capitalize. And you pick out Devontae Adams, you expect the team to like, okay, like yes, the Steelers are a good defense, but the Jets have put up 15 points is that's just you cannot be having that happen. To get shut out in the second half
no,
too.
you cannot.
Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson were both semi-involved in the offense. Brees Hall was great for the most part. I think Brees Hall is probably the biggest winner of the Devontae Adams trade because I think it really opened up his ability to run and as a passing option. But
Yeah,
this felt like a big game for the Jets, and the Jets just proceeded to, as they've normally done in the past, just jets it up. And
yeah,
if they somehow lose, no offense, if they somehow lose to the Patriots this weekend, what do you do at that point? You fired the head coach already. You brought in
yeah,
Devontae Adams. You made a big swing. You picked up another guy who a retread Packers
yeah.
addition. If the Jets lose to the Patriots, then there's serious problems, and the schedule doesn't get any better for the Jets. They have the Texans the week
Also, the
after.
season's
They
done
play
at
the
that point.
Cardinals too, which Cardinals have been up and down, but the Cardinals are still a good
Yeah,
team, I'd say. Then you play the Colts. Okay, you potentially win that game. Seahawks, it depends what week you get. Dolphins have Tua. You play the Dolphins actually twice, and Tua's back. Hopefully he's healthy. You
yeah,
play the Jaguars, but then you play the Rams and Bills too. If
yeah,
like the Jets are 2-5, like they cannot be afforded to pick up any more losses, and they don't have a luxury of having an easy schedule the rest of the year, and they don't have the luxury of just like coasting. Their defense, you should not be giving up 37 points. I know Russell Wilson had a good game, but you should not be giving up 37 points to the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's completely unacceptable for a team like the Jets with quote unquote Super Bowl aspirations.
yeah. I completely agree with you there, Rafi, and I think I want to switch over to talk about some like some like key games of the week. I think that can really dictate the rest of the season. First off, and that doesn't really dictate the rest of the season, but I think it's big to see Bears Commanders,
One
Caleb
versus two,
Williams in the one
potentially
versus number
two,
two.
yeah.
Yep, you know,
But you know what, David?
hopefully,
Here, I'll
uh,
just cut you off real quick to mention this game.
yeah,
If
no,
I'm
you're so
Dan
good, man.
Quinn, if I'm the Commanders, I don't start Jaden Daniels in
Yeah,
this game. Even if he's been limited in practice this week, I personally just I this
I'd make him an emergency
you're
backup.
playing with cash money. Jaden Daniels has been great this year. You have 5 wins, which I didn't even think they were going to potentially even get to 5 wins this year. You're already at 5 wins on the year. Take your time with the rookie quarterback. It's okay. Let him sit out this week. Let Marcus Mariota play. Marcus Mariota held
Yeah,
it down. It was first the Panthers,
he
yes,
did,
but he
but
did an
yeah,
admirable job. Marcus Mariota, I do not want him playing the rest of the year. He is not that guy. But
yeah,
for another week, I think you can throw him out there versus the Bears and feel semi like okay, like he could potentially pull off a win here. And the worst thing you can do is if Jane Daniels is not 100%, is throwing him right back out there. And if he gets re-injured, God forbid, or something happens, then the whole season's completely derailed. So I say
it is. Yeah,
you just let Jane Daniels. He's been limited all week. Game time decision. Just have him say, you know what? We want you to be fully healthy. We want you to be ready to go. He runs the ball. He runs quite a bit too. So it's just like stay healthy, take the week off,
yeah.
fully recover, and then
Mm,
you're all ready for the rest of the year. So I just
I'm gonna
learn from the
I'm gonna
past.
tell you.
Learn from the past. That's all I got to say right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, I do agree with learning from the past. I'm just gonna slightly disagree with that. I think he should be an emergency backup because I think that like their schedule is not bad. Don't get me wrong, but because they play the Giants the week after. the Steelers, which is a good team, but you have the Steelers, Eagles, Cowboys. The end of the season is also not too bad. I just think like this is an important game. I think for them to really win and really put a big difference between them and the rest of the NFC East. And so because of that, I really think that he should play maybe like the second half or be very limited in gameplay. But agrees to disagree. I don't think we could go. I don't think we need to argue about that. But another game I think that should be talked about. There's two other games: Colts Texans and Falcons Bucks.
Oh wow,
I'll
you didn't
explain
even
to you why
say
the
you didn't even
Falcons.
say the game I was thinking about. Okay, so this will be fun.
Really? Okay. Well, let me talk about Falcons Bucks Buccaneers, and the reason because this game is so important is because you beat the Buccaneers, you you don't clinch the division, but you come very very close to, right? Because the only other threat to the Falcons in the NFC South is the Buccaneers, right? You beat them here, that means you swept them this entire season. And then the Falcons got the Cowboys, the Saints, Broncos. All three teams have been really struggling. And then it's kind of smooth cruising after that. I mean, other than the Chargers and Vikings, you end off the season with the Raiders, Giants, Commanders, which, that could be a tough game, and the Panthers. So the Falcons could really position themselves well if they win this week. And that's why I think it's a huge game for them. In terms
Yeah,
of
they're also
the,
real quick just to chime in. They're 3-0 so
yeah,
far in the division. So if they go to 4-0, then they're looking really good. And that's been one of the fallacies of past Falcons teams, aside from obviously terrible quarterback play and Arthur Smith deciding to have the backup tight end like throw a pass on the 1 yard line instead of just giving the ball to Bijan Robinson. Sorry, PTSD. They're winning these conference games, and if that's something that they didn't do in years past, they didn't have a good enough conference record. They drop one to the
yeah,
Panthers somehow. They'll always split with the
yeah,
Saints. The Buccaneers,
yeah.
past years, they were getting like swept by the Bucks too. So to be 3-0 and potentially to go to 4-0, I think that's just absolutely massive for the Falcons to build up
Yeah.
that lead on the division. But continue on.
Yeah. I think, look, this Colts, it's a very pivotal game for them. Why? If you don't beat the Texans,
Joe
the
Flacco season.
Texans have. It's Joe Flacco season, that is indeed. The Texans go 2 games on above you, right? And then your rest of the season schedule is like, it's not bad, but it's not great either. You play the Vikings, Bills, Lions, and Broncos. Beyond that, I mean, yeah, their schedule gets a bit easier because they have the Jets on their schedule, the Patriots, the Giants, the Jags, the Titans. So to an extent, their schedule is fairly easy. But at the same time, you want to win the division, right? And you don't want to really play, be put into a wild card race. And that's why I think this is such a big game for them, for the Colts. For the Texans, I mean, look, they're in the same position as the Buccaneers, which I already explained. So those are my highlights of the game of the weeks, like key games to watch. Rafi, what are yours?
David, real quick, do you start Joe
Yeah,
Flacco this week versus the Texans? Because Anthony Richardson was very hyped going through the season. We saw the flashes of the first 4 games before he got put out for the year. Unfortunately, got injured and was out for the year last year. And there's high expectations. And he has currently 3 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, just under 800 yards. He has a QBR of 43, and I know QBR isn't like the biggest. It's not like directly a quarterback stat, and really to the team too. But he has not been good this year. He's having a massive, I guess you can call it a sophomore slump, but I'd just say it was more like this would be like the midway point of his rookie year. He's played essentially like 7, 8 games. He got injured as well this year earlier on. And do you start Joe Flacco in this game? Because Joe Flacco hasn't been bad. And once again, we saw what he did last year, but you can't just keep rolling out Joe Flacco, can you?
look, in an ideal world, yes, you can continue rolling him out. But at the end of the day, Anthony Richardson won them the game last week. I don't see how you Yeah, it wasn't pretty against the Dolphins, but I don't see how you can bench him really.
But it was
I
the
think if there's,
Tuala's Dolphins, and they won 16-10.
I know,
I
Robbie, but
know,
at the
like
end of the
it's
day,
you don't want to
That
touch
doesn't.
anything after you
You
win a
can't.
game.
That will kill his. Look, it's the same way you bench Bryce Young. You can't do that to a QB, unless he gets injured or they say hey, we want you to rest a bit more. Tell the doctors to give him some sort of a note. Other than that, I feel like you need to roll him out. Yes, Joe Flacco played well, but he also didn't play. amazing. They only put up 20 points on the Titans, right? So, I feel like, yes, Joe Flacco played fairly well. He did his job, but I can't argue for Anthony Richardson to be benched. I just can't.
Very fair. All right, we'll move into the game that I want to talk about and the game that I'm very surprised that you didn't mention. Cowboys 49ers. This is a massive game for both teams, and I think both teams cannot afford to lose this game. The Niners, especially, where it's Christian McCaffrey, is he going to come back after the bye? That's the big. Everyone's saying he is. I get mixed vibes because we went from he should be good for week 1 to he's dealing with a little bit of an injury to he's going to be out for like the next month, and now it's he's going to be back after the bye week. So we ramped up really quickly to like 10+ weeks for McCaffrey to be out for, and even when he's going to come back, we discussed this last week. He's probably going to be playing mostly receiving in the receiving game. You just lost Brandon Ayuk for the rest of the year, and the rest of the season for the 49ers, if they fall to 3-5, they lose this game to Dallas. You not only have to deal with Dallas fans and them pretending their delusion of thinking that they're going to go to the Super Bowl, and then you have the fact too that they're going to be happy because the Yankees and Dodgers, one of them's going to win the World Series, which is great for Cowboys fans. But the Niners, the rest of the season is then you have Tampa Bay, Seattle, Green Bay, Buffalo, Chicago, Rams, Dolphins, Lions, Cardinals.
Wow, you're right, man. This is an
The
important
injuries
game for
are
the Niners.
ramping up. It destroyed
They
the
are.
roster for the 49ers. They cannot lose this
Yeah.
game. If they go to 3-5,
No.
essentially, like, you can still make the playoffs with 7-8 losses. That's the benefit of having a 17 playoff. But if the Niners lose this game, like, you're injured to heck and back. But like, you can't drop this game. This is a must-win game for them. And then Cowboys too. Micah Parsons is out again. Dexter Lawrence isn't playing, so you're still losing. You still are out your two top players on defense on the back end. The running game has been like Rico Dowdle has kind of been solid. He hasn't been anything special. Zeke and Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook I haven't seen. I don't know what's going on with him. He was brought into the Cowboys, but I don't think he's played even a snap for them. And Dak Prescott's had a terrible year so far. So if the Cowboys lose this game, you'd have to imagine Mike McCarthy's going to get fired shortly, like at some point. Maybe not like immediately, but he's definitely on his way out. This year, it's a terrible season for the Cowboys. And if the Niners lose this game, then you're already injured. Do you even play Christian McCaffrey? If you drop another game or two, if you drop the next week game before the bye and you go to 3-6, do you even play Christian McCaffrey this year? Or do you just punt on the season? I don't know. I think this has massive playoff implications, massive job implications, and this is only week 8, but I think this will dictate both teams' trajectory for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. You're right. I didn't even think about this game, but yeah, this is huge for both teams, and it's prime time. So we'll see it under the lights, and it'll be fun to watch. I think both teams haven't been doing great, but I think both teams can put up a show. So
Absolutely. And I think that'll do it then for this edition of the Benchwarmer Sports Podcast. So we hope you enjoyed. As always, be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel as well, follow us on TikTok, Benchwarmer_sports. And yeah, let us know about these big games. We'll see what happens. We'll be sure to discuss it in the coming weeks as well. So let us know what you think in the comments below. And have a good one. See ya.
peace.